Emma had always lived a quiet and predictable life in the small town where she was born. The days looked almost the same: morning sunlight through the same window, the same walk to the same local grocery shop, the same people greeting her with the same familiar smiles. She liked this routine. It made her feel safe, like nothing bad could ever surprise her. She grew up in a home where rules were followed, where calm voices filled the rooms, and where everyone believed that a peaceful life was the best life. She never imagined that someone completely opposite to her would enter her world. Caleb Westlove was the kind of man who did not stay anywhere for long. People knew him by name, even before they knew him in person. Whenever someone said, "the Restless Cowboy," they meant him. He worked in different ranches, joined rodeo competitions when he felt like it, and traveled with no fixed plan. He could pack his whole life in one small bag and ride off without looking back. He wasn't rude or wild, just full of energy, full of movement, like the wind that never settled. People admired him for his courage, but also whispered that no woman could ever keep him in one place. Emma had heard these stories too, but she never paid much attention. Cowboys like him belonged to the open land, not inside towns like hers. She believed she would probably marry someone calm, someone like the boys she grew up with: steady, soft-spoken, predictable. But life had its own plans. One summer evening, the town held its yearly festival. It was the kind of event where families came out, children ran around, and everyone dressed nicely because it was the one time the town felt bright and lively. Emma wore a simple white dress and helped the elder women arrange the homemade sweets on wooden tables. As she fixed the plates, she heard people whispering, "Caleb Westlove is here. The cowboy who keeps traveling." She did not look up immediately. She had no interest in men who attracted too much attention. But then, she accidentally dropped a spoon, and as she bent to pick it up, her eyes lifted just enough to catch a glimpse of him. He stood near the entrance, tall, sun-tanned from long days outdoors, and carrying the confident yet easy expression of someone who feared nothing. His smile was relaxed, like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at the same time. She quickly looked away, telling herself she had no reason to stare. Caleb, meanwhile, noticed her without meaning to. In the middle of the crowd, filled with noise and excitement, she looked different: calm, gentle, quiet. She wasn't trying to get attention, but somehow she held his. He watched her neat movements, her polite smile, and the softness in her eyes when she handed sweets to children. Something about her made him pause longer than he expected. He walked toward her table not because he was hungry, but because he was curious. When he spoke, his voice carried a friendly warmth. "Those look good," he said, pointing to the sweets. Emma nodded politely. "Thank you. They're freshly made." He expected her to say more, perhaps ask his name or speak about the festival. But she didn't. She simply smiled gently and waited for him to respond. That surprised him. Most people talked a lot around him, asking about his travels, his adventures, his work, but Emma didn't seem interested in any of that. For the first time in a long while, he felt at a loss for words. So he bought a piece of sweet, thanked her, and walked away. But his mind didn't walk away. It stayed with her. Throughout the evening, their eyes met a few times. His gaze was always curious, playful. Hers was shy, but steady. Whenever she caught him looking, she would quickly turn away, pretending to focus on her work. She told herself that it meant nothing, that he was simply passing through the town, like everyone said he did. But fate kept bringing them closer. Later that night, when Emma stepped outside for a moment to breathe the fresh air, she found Caleb leaning against a wooden fence, watching the stars above. He noticed her immediately and smiled. "Busy night?" he asked. She nodded. A little. He could feel that she wasn't good at starting conversations, so he tried something gentle. "Do you like festivals?" "They're nice," she replied, "but I like quiet places more." That made him chuckle softly. "Then it seems this place suits you." Her cheeks warmed slightly. She was not used to men talking to her this way. Calm, respectful, and genuinely interested. They talked a little. Nothing deep, nothing dramatic. Just simple questions about the town, the weather, and how long she had lived there. He didn't share much about himself because he didn't want to overwhelm her. And she didn't ask for details because she sensed he was someone who lived outside the walls of ordinary life. But even in that short conversation, something small and almost invisible grew between them, a spark neither of them understood yet. After that night, they continued crossing paths. Not always on purpose. Sometimes he would be buying supplies at the local store, and she would walk in at the same time. Other times he would help the townsfolk with small chores, and she would come by to bring cold water. Each meeting was brief, yet meaningful. Emma's family noticed it too. Her mother warned her gently, "He is a good man, but he never stays. Don't let your heart wander where stability cannot follow." Emma listened, because she respected her mother, but her heart didn't completely agree. Caleb never gave her false promises. He never acted disrespectfully. Whenever he spoke to her, he looked directly into her eyes, sincere, humble, honest. He didn't flirt with her the way some young men did. He treated her like someone valuable. Caleb, on the other hand, started realizing something he never expected. He liked being in the town. And the reason was Emma. She had a calmness that made him feel like he could breathe differently, more deeply, as if he didn't have to run all the time. Her kindness reminded him of a life he never allowed himself to imagine. A life where he didn't have to move constantly just to feel alive. He tried to ignore the feeling at first. Restless men didn't change. Cowboys like him didn't stay put. But each time he thought about riding away, he remembered Emma's gentle smile, and suddenly the road didn't look as exciting as before. One afternoon, while helping repair a broken fence near the river, he saw her walking by with a basket of laundry. She stopped and gave him a small wave. Something warm spread through his chest at that simple gesture. After she passed by, he found himself staring at the path long after she disappeared from sight. His friends joked, "Caleb, seems like the restless cowboy is finally slowing down." He just smiled. But inside, he felt a strange mix of fear and hope. The truth was simple. Emma made him feel something he had never felt: peace. And he was drawn to it more than he expected. Little did they know that this gentle beginning, this quiet pull between two opposite souls, would take them into a future neither of them could have predicted. A future filled with challenges, love, misunderstandings, and strength they didn't know they had. But for now, in this early stage of their story, it was just two people discovering that sometimes the most unexpected connections are the strongest ones. Their story hadn't fully begun yet, but the foundation was already there, quiet, sincere, and growing day by day. Caleb had never been the kind of man who planned too far ahead. He lived one day at a time, took work wherever it came, and trusted the road more than any promise. But as the days passed and he kept seeing Emma in small, unexpected moments, something inside him began to shift. At first, he thought it was just a passing feeling. Maybe he was simply drawn to her quiet nature because it was different from the restless world he lived in. But soon he realized it was more than that, much more. He began staying in town longer than he had stayed anywhere before. It wasn't because the work was better, or the place was special. It was because every morning, a small hope woke up with him. The hope of seeing Emma, even just for a minute. Sometimes he would see her walking to the market with a basket. Sometimes she would be sweeping her porch, her hair gently moving with the wind. Sometimes he wouldn't see her at all, but even that made him stay a little longer, wondering if tomorrow he might get a glimpse. Emma was aware of his presence too. She didn't show it openly, but inside, her heart reacted whenever she saw him. She admired his hard-working nature, the way he always helped anyone who needed assistance, and the little smile he gave her every time their paths crossed. He had a wild energy in him, yet he behaved gently around her, as if he didn't want to scare her away. Her family, especially her mother, began noticing how often Caleb appeared near their home or at the market. Her mother wasn't against him, but she was cautious. She had heard stories about men who moved from place to place, never settling down, never building a steady life. She wanted her daughter to have security, a home, stability, a peaceful future. And nothing about Caleb's past suggested he could give that. But Emma's heart slowly drifted toward him anyway. She wasn't falling quickly or foolishly. It was happening softly, like a flower blooming during spring without even realizing it. One evening, Caleb gathered all his courage and went to Emma's house. He wasn't even sure what he wanted to say. He just knew he wanted to talk to her honestly. When he reached the door, Emma's father was outside fixing an old wooden chair. Caleb greeted him with respect, and the older man nodded politely. He didn't dislike Caleb, but he wasn't ready to trust him with his daughter either. Emma came out moments later, surprised to see him there. She wiped her hands nervously on her apron. "You came. Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Caleb nodded. "I wanted to talk to you, if that's all right." Her father looked at both of them, then quietly went inside, giving them a bit of space but staying close enough to listen if needed. Caleb took a breath. He wasn't a man who feared danger, storms, or rough work. But at that moment, he feared saying the wrong words. "I don't stay in one place for long," he began honestly. "You probably already know that. I've spent my whole life moving from ranch to ranch, never thinking about the future. But lately, things feel different." Emma listened carefully, her hands clasped together. "I don't know why," he continued. "But when I'm in this town, I feel peaceful. And when I see you, I feel like maybe I don't need to keep running." Emma felt her heart flutter. No one had ever spoken to her with such sincerity before. He looked at her gently. "Emma, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I just needed to tell you that I care about you." She took a small breath, trying to steady her voice. "I care about you too." Her words were soft, but they carried the strength of truth. That moment marked a change in both of their lives. They didn't begin anything immediately, not officially. But there was a new layer of understanding, a quiet acceptance. They started spending more time together. Caleb would walk her halfway home from the market. She would bring him fresh bread while he worked. They talked about small things, clouds, animals, the weather, but every conversation made their bond stronger. Some people in town began whispering. Some were happy for Emma, believing she deserved a kind, hard-working partner. Others worried Caleb would eventually leave, breaking her heart in the process. But Emma didn't listen to the whispers. She trusted what she saw in Caleb's eyes: warmth, honesty, and a longing he didn't fully understand himself. One day, after finishing a long shift, repairing fences near the old ranch road, Caleb sat alone under a large tree, thinking. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. He felt something pulling inside his chest, a feeling he had never felt before. It wasn't restlessness. It wasn't hunger for the road. It was a deep fear. The fear of losing Emma. He realized that if he didn't take a bold step forward, he might lose her forever. Yet, if he took that step, he would have to change everything about the way he lived. He needed stability. He needed commitment. He needed courage, not the courage to face danger, but the courage to let someone into his life. That night, Caleb made a decision. The next morning, he went to Emma's house. She was in the garden watering the small plants near the fence. When she saw him walking toward her with a serious expression, she felt her heart race. "Emma," he started, his voice steady but emotional. "I've been thinking about us, about what I want, and what I'm afraid of. I know I've lived like a wandering man my whole life, but I don't want that life anymore. Not if it means losing you." She looked at him with wide, soft eyes. "I want a home. I want peace. I want a future. And I want it with you." He paused, gathering his courage. "So, I'm asking if you'll marry me." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Marriage was a big step, bigger than anything she had expected so soon. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes filled with emotion. She didn't doubt his feelings, but she feared the uncertainty of such a sudden proposal. Her mother, who had been inside the house, heard voices and stepped out quietly. She watched from the porch, not wanting to interfere but unable to hide the worry in her eyes. Emma looked at Caleb with a mixture of love and fear. I need time, she whispered honestly. Caleb nodded immediately. Of course, take all the time you need. I don't want to rush you. I just want you to know how serious I am. For days, Emma couldn't think of anything else. She prayed for guidance, talked to her parents, and tried to understand her own heart. She knew Caleb was not perfect, but he never pretended to be. He was honest, sincere, and willing to change. She felt safe with him, even though his life had been unpredictable. One evening, as she watched the sun disappear behind the hills, she finally understood her answer. She didn't want a future without him. She didn't want to wonder where he was or if she would ever see him again. She wanted the man who made her feel alive, peaceful, and cherished. The next day, she met him near the wooden fence where they had first shared a meaningful conversation. Yes, she said softly, I will marry you. Caleb's eyes filled with relief and happiness. He didn't shout or jump or make a scene. He simply held her hands gently, grateful for a chance to build a new life. Their wedding was simple, attended by family, friends, and neighbors. Emma wore a light cream dress, and Caleb dressed in his cleanest clothes. Everyone could see the hope in Emma's eyes and the determination in Caleb's. They promised to build a life filled with trust and respect. But after the wedding, reality slowly entered their lives. Caleb loved Emma deeply, but his restless habits did not disappear overnight. Sometimes he woke up before dawn, feeling the urge to ride out and work far from home. Sometimes he took long ranch jobs that kept him away for days. He didn't do it on purpose, his old ways were simply hard to change. Emma tried to stay strong. She took care of the home, waited for him patiently, and never complained. But deep inside, she often felt lonely and confused. She loved Caleb, but she also longed for the peace she had before. She wondered whether she had asked too much from him or whether he had promised too much to her. Caleb didn't see how hard it was for her. He thought he was doing the best he could. He didn't realize that each early departure and late return added weight to Emma's shoulders. Their love was strong, but their differences were beginning to show. And little by little, the quiet distance between them began to grow, setting the stage for the moment when everything would break open. The early months of Emma and Caleb's marriage were filled with hope. But slowly, small cracks began appearing. Quiet cracks that neither of them spoke about. Emma tried her best to understand Caleb's habits. She knew he had lived most of his life, moving from ranch to ranch, working far from town, riding long distances without rest. She believed he would eventually learn to slow down, adjust to a peaceful home, and share more time with her. But habits formed over years do not disappear so quickly. Many mornings, Caleb woke up before sunrise, quietly getting dressed while Emma slept beside him. He would kiss her forehead gently, whisper a promise to return, and ride off into the early light. Emma often heard the distant hooves and sat up in bed, watching from the window as he disappeared down the dirt road. Each time, she told herself he would come back earlier next time. Each time, she hoped he would stay for a full day. But the days seldom went as she hoped. Caleb always took the hardest jobs, the longest hours, the farthest ranches. Not because he wanted to leave Emma, but because he didn't know any other way to live. Working long hours was natural for him. Resting felt strange. Staying home felt like breaking his own rhythm. Emma would spend her days cleaning, cooking, organizing their small home, and waiting for him with a quiet heart. At first, the waiting felt sweet, like something a loving wife did with pride. But as weeks turned into months, the quiet inside the house began to feel heavier. The long evenings became lonely moments. The candles burned low before he returned, and some nights he came home so late that Emma had already fallen asleep on the couch, too tired to keep waiting. Caleb noticed her tired eyes sometimes, but he thought it was just because she managed the home. He did not realize that her tiredness came from waiting, from hoping, from trying to fill the silence he left behind. One evening, after a long, tiring day, Emma was sitting on the porch steps with her hands folded loosely in her lap. She looked pale, and her shoulders slouched as though they carried a heavy burden. When Caleb rode into the yard, he saw her and felt something inside him tighten. She didn't stand up to greet him like she usually did. She didn't give her soft smile. She just looked at him with exhaustion swirling in her eyes. He rushed to her. "Emma, are you all right?" She lifted her head slowly. Her voice came out weak, softer than a whisper. "I'm so tired. I can't walk." Those words cut through Caleb's heart like nothing ever had. He knelt beside her, worry flooding his face. "Why didn't you rest? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Emma looked down, unable to hold back her feelings any longer. Her voice trembled. "Caleb, I don't have anyone to talk to during the day. I do everything alone. I try to be strong, but I feel like I'm trying to hold a house with only one pair of hands." He touched her arm, feeling guilt rise inside him. "I didn't know you felt this way. I thought you were doing fine." A slow tear rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it softly. "You are always gone, Caleb. I know you love me, but I don't see you. I don't hear your voice. I don't know what you're thinking. I feel like I married a shadow instead of a man." Her words were gentle, but the truth behind them was deep. Caleb felt his throat tighten. He had never considered that his long hours, his constant riding, his restless habits, could hurt her this much. He always believed love alone was enough, that as long as he came home at the end of the day, everything would be fine. But Emma had been living a different reality. A reality filled with silence and loneliness, while he was out chasing work or moving with the same old speed he had always known. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice rough with regret. "I didn't mean to make you feel alone." Product. Emma didn't blame him. She knew Caleb was not careless, he was simply unaware of how his choices affected her. "I want to be strong for you," she said softly, "but I feel like I'm fading. I feel tired in my heart, Caleb. Not just in my body." He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw everything he had been missing. The hurt, the longing, the exhaustion of trying to understand him, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the effort of holding the marriage together while he was always on the move. He lifted her gently and carried her inside. She leaned against him, heavy with fatigue. He placed her on the couch and made her tea, something he had rarely done before. He stayed by her side the entire evening, refusing to go anywhere. He held her hand, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of his mistakes settle on his shoulders. That night, for the first time, Caleb lay awake long after Emma had fallen asleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything he had done wrong. He remembered all the mornings he left her alone, all the evenings he returned too late to talk, all the promises he made without fully understanding what they meant. He thought about his past life, full of running, full of motion. Back then, he didn't belong to anyone, and no one belonged to him. If he left a place, nothing changed. But now, he had a wife, gentle, loving, patient Emma, and his actions had consequences. The next morning, Caleb stayed home. Emma noticed this and felt a mixture of relief and worry. She didn't want him to feel trapped. She didn't want him to change out of guilt or pressure. She just wanted a partner, someone who shared life with her, someone who was truly present. They sat together at the kitchen table in silence until Caleb finally spoke. "I think I've been living like a man who has no one to care for," he said quietly. "I didn't understand how much my choices were hurting you. But now I do, Emma. And I want to fix it." Emma looked at him with soft hope. "I never wanted to stop you from being yourself. I just wanted to feel like I'm not alone in this marriage." He reached across the table and held her hand gently. "You won't be alone anymore. I promise." But promises were not enough this time. Caleb knew that real change needed real effort. Over the next few weeks, he tried to stay closer to home. He accepted shorter jobs, refused to travel too far, and spent more evenings with Emma. They cooked together, talked more, and shared small moments that felt precious. Emma slowly began to regain her strength, but the emotional gap between them still needed healing. One evening, Emma told him softly, "I'm scared." He looked at her. "Of what?" "That you'll go back to the way things were. That one day you'll ride off again and forget how hard it was for me. Caleb took her hands in his. I won't forget. I can't forget. You fainted on the porch because of me. She shook her head. Not because of you. Because of the distance between us. Her words hit him harder than anything else had. It wasn't just his work. It was the emotional space he had created without realizing it. He had been present, but not truly there. Caleb understood something important that night. Love was not just arriving home at the end of the day. Love was staying emotionally close, sharing burdens, noticing each other's tiredness, and choosing togetherness over habit. It was a painful lesson, but one he needed, and Emma, though exhausted, still believed in their bond. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the worry he carried, and the determination to change. But one thing was clear: the biggest test of their marriage was now in front of them. Caleb would have to prove that he could hold on to Emma not just with words, but with steady actions. Emma would have to learn to trust this new version of him, slowly and carefully. Their hearts were tired, but not broken. Their love was shaken, but still alive. Part 3 ended with a silent question hanging between them. Could Caleb truly change the restless ways of his past? And could Emma give him the time and space he needed to become the man she believed he could be? The answer would unfold in the next part of their story. Caleb woke up the next morning with a heaviness inside him. But it was not the kind that came from tired muscles or long hours of work. It was the weight of responsibility, the understanding that Emma needed more from him than he had been giving. He lay still for a long time, watching her sleep peacefully beside him. Her face looked calm now, but he remembered clearly how exhausted she had been just days earlier. The memory of her whispering, "I'm so tired. I can't walk," still echoed inside his chest. He knew he couldn't go back to the life he had lived before. Something had changed forever. He wasn't just a wandering cowboy anymore. He was a husband, someone who had a home, someone who had a partner who depended on him, someone who had a reason to stay. After breakfast, Caleb made a firm decision. He walked to the ranch owner he had been working for and asked about a permanent position. The owner, an older man with kind eyes, looked surprised at first. "You want to stay here? In town?" the man asked. Caleb nodded. "Yes. I need to be closer to my wife. I need work that doesn't take me far for days." The owner smiled warmly. "You've always worked hard, Caleb. If you want a stable job, it's yours." Hearing those words made Caleb feel something he had never felt before, a sense of belonging. He wasn't just passing through anymore. He was building something steady. When he returned home, Emma was sitting on the porch mending a piece of cloth. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. Caleb sat down beside her and gently took the cloth from her hands. "I got a permanent job," he said softly. "Right here. No long trips. No disappearing for days." Emma blinked in surprise. You did," he nodded. "I don't want you to wait alone anymore. I don't want you to wake up wondering if I'll be home before dark. I want to be here." Her eyes filled with tears, not the painful ones she had shed before, but soft tears of relief. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace settle inside her chest. The following days looked different from the past. Caleb woke up at a normal hour, ate breakfast with Emma, and left for work nearby. He returned every evening before sunset. They shared dinner together, talked about their day, and even took small walks around the yard. Emma began to feel her strength returning. Her cheeks regained their color. Her eyes looked brighter, and the tiredness slowly faded away. She no longer felt the sharp loneliness that had taken over her heart earlier. She still needed time to fully trust that this change would last, but she could see the effort Caleb was putting in, and that meant everything. Caleb also felt the difference in himself. He was learning how to slow down. He was learning how to enjoy quiet evenings, how to sit still without feeling trapped, how to be present with Emma, instead of always thinking about the next ranch or the next job. Sometimes he still felt the old restlessness rise inside him, but when he looked at Emma, smiling softly at him, welcoming him home, walking beside him, he realized there was more comfort in her presence than in every open road he had ever traveled. One evening, after finishing work, Caleb found Emma sitting under the large tree near their home. She had spread a small blanket and placed a basket of food beside her. The sunlight fell gently through the branches, making the moment look almost magical. He walked toward her with a smile. "What's all this?" She looked up shyly. "I thought, maybe we could have a small picnic. Just the two of us." Caleb sat beside her, his heart warming at the thoughtfulness. They ate simple food: bread, cheese, and fruit. But it tasted better than any meal Caleb had eaten on the road. Maybe it was the peaceful setting, maybe it was Emma's gentle presence, or maybe it was simply love growing stronger. After they ate, Emma looked at Caleb with calm eyes. "You've changed so much in these weeks." Caleb smiled softly. "I had to. I almost lost you without even realizing it." She shook her head. "You never lost me. I was just tired. I needed you to see me." He reached for her hand. "I see you now." They sat quietly for a while, listening to the evening sounds, the rustling leaves, the distant call of birds heading home, the soft breeze passing through the grass. It was peaceful, almost healing. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Their marriage slowly strengthened, built now on understanding and shared moments instead of silence and distance. They learned to communicate better. Emma learned to express her needs more clearly, and Caleb learned to listen before acting. They didn't become perfect, but they became real partners. One afternoon, Caleb returned home earlier than usual. He found Emma sitting by the window, sewing something delicate. When she looked up, she smiled warmly. "You're home early," she said. He took off his hat and sat beside her. "Yes, I wanted to spend time with you." She put her sewing aside and took his hands in hers. "I'm proud of you." Caleb looked down, humbled. "I'm trying." "You're doing more than trying," she said softly. "You're growing, and I'm grateful." It was in that moment that Caleb felt something he had never felt before, a deep, steady sense of fulfillment. Not the excitement of traveling, not the rush of riding fast across open fields, but the quiet happiness of being loved and understood. Some evenings, they took slow walks around their land. Other times, they sat by the fireplace talking about simple things. The world outside was still full of noise and movement, but their home had become a place of calm, a place where both of them could breathe. Caleb also found new peace within himself. The restless cowboy inside him did not disappear completely, but he learned to guide it instead of letting it guide him. He found joy in returning home, in seeing Emma's soft smile when he stepped through the door, in hearing her gentle footsteps as she moved around the house. One sunset, they stood together near the small hill behind their home. The sky was painted in orange and gold, stretching endlessly like a warm blanket. Caleb slipped his arm around Emma's waist and pulled her close. "You know," he said in a gentle voice, "I spent most of my life chasing the horizon because I thought peace lived somewhere far away, but I was wrong." Emma looked at him, curious. "Where does it live then?" He smiled softly. "Right here, with you." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood there watching the sun sink slowly, feeling the warmth fade into the cool evening breeze. In that moment, they weren't a restless cowboy and a tired bride anymore. They were a pair of hearts that had learned to walk together steadily, gently, with understanding and patience. Their love was no longer fragile. It had been tested, strengthened, and rebuilt. It was a love that knew pain but chose healing. A love that saw weakness but chose support. A love that faced distance but chose closeness. And as they stood there beneath the open sky, it felt clear that this time, Caleb wasn't running to find peace. He had found it, and he wasn't going to let it go. Their story didn't end with loud twists or dramatic moments. It ended with something more powerful: two people finding balance after almost losing it, finding comfort after feeling alone, finding each other again when they could have drifted apart. The restless cowboy had finally found his home, and Emma, once tired and overwhelmed, now felt cherished and seen. Together, they stepped forward into a future filled with gentle days, steady love, and the quiet promise that no matter what challenges came, they would face them side by side.